Hello and welcome to Watts Not Gas. Today we're covering a speed pedelec called the Ellio Original. So let's cover this somewhat special design, right? Because it doesn't look like the standard class 3 bike that's big, that's sportive, and let's call it sexy. This is more of a commuter speed pedelec. It's designed for comfort and safety. But if you're looking for speed, it definitely poses a challenge for the competitors. First off, it's designed to have a low step. The smaller wheels, 20-inch, are also something that's instantly visible, and to be honest, it's usually the turn-off for most of these people looking for a sportive speed pedelec. But it's designed that way for a reason. The 20-inch wheels make sure that the bike has an extreme low center of gravity, and that gives you way more stability when you're on the open road going at high speeds. Especially on this bike. It's quite a heavy bike because that battery that fits here, let's ignore this one for a second because that's just an option that you can add, and it was on the test bike, so I had to test it out. But that weight that's in the battery, plus the engine, plus the frame that's quite hefty, as well as a front wheel motor, they all weigh quite a bit. And so that low center of gravity is a must on this bike. It's not meant to be light, it's meant to be heavy and stable, and so that center of gravity had to be kept low. What's nice to see about Ellio is they really built this speed pedelec from the ground up. Other brands, they had a bike and they made it faster. Ellio didn't have a bike, they had an engine and they built a bike around it. If we look at power and performance, it's also an area where Ellio, or I should say Intuidrive, is quite special. Not only the technology or the hardware, which they do make themselves, but also the software. It's an intelligent bike, it's smart, and it adapts to the way you ride. It really offers a comfortable riding experience. This engine is also very powerful, together with the front engine, because it does have two engines and thus rendering this bike a two-wheel drive speed pedelec. Together they offer 1400 watts of power, and that's quite powerful. Definitely if your max speed is 45 kilometers an hour or 28 miles an hour, then 1400 watts is definitely a powerhouse. And the way this engine is built or drives the bike is also quite special. Others just put the engine in the rear wheel or have a mid-hub engine that drives the rear wheel, which is technically also what Ellio does, but they do it in a special way. This is a true drive system. We have one carbon belt here that figures out how much you're pedaling and what gear it needs to be in, and then the other one is linked to the engine and provides that extra electric support. Together with the front wheel engine, they have about 120 Newton meters. That front wheel addition really is nice because it does create for that two-wheel drive, which is a benefit when you're going uphill, when you're on flat surfaces. It gives you more grip, it gives you more comfort, and it drives both wheels at the same time, offering more control over the vehicle. I also mentioned software. You need to know that this bike is fully automatic. There's no gears, you don't need to change gears. Everything's fully automatic. The thing you can change is the RPM, the rounds per minute. If you want a higher cadence or a lower one, you can adapt that to make sure that it fits your style of riding, let's say. If I am to compare this two-wheel drive to other speed pedelec competitors, especially on the fast side, the high acceleration, we notice that due to the weight it's a bit slower, as well as the mid-engine doesn't work like a rear-wheel motor. It's not the same. The acceleration on this Ellio is quite okay, but others with that rear-wheel acceleration will be faster. But once this guy goes up to speed, let's call it 20 kilometers an hour, 30, it really takes off and there's no catching up after that. Ellio also has something really cool, which is called the cruise control function. As soon as you hit a certain speed, you can activate the cruise control. You'll still need to keep pedaling, but not at the same power level. So you can just stride along and the bike will push you up to that speed, which is awesome if you're covering long distances and you want to keep a high speed without having to pedal constantly at that higher level. It's very simple. Level 1 pushes you up to 25 kilometers an hour. Level 2 pushes you to 30. Level 3 and 4, let's call it 35 to 40 and 45 at ease. At level 4 you can reach 45 kilometers an hour without needing to pedal too hard. But then they added this fifth mode, and they call it the catch me if you can mode, because as soon as you activate it, the bike flies and goes up to 45 kilometers an hour, maintaining that speed for as long as you need. Let's quickly cover the experiences I've had with this bike, because those driving modes really do have an influence on them. If you want to go up a hill in second or third mode, which is quite powerful but not the most powerful, it will be quite difficult. The bike is very heavy and pushing it yourself is close to impossible. Now with that fifth mode, the catch me if you can mode, if you have a runway and you're in that fifth mode, you can go up a hill, almost any hill, quite fast. Let's call it a just above average uphill performance, but as soon as we're talking flat surfaces, they're really one of the fastest. Not in acceleration, there you have the rear wheel competitors which are a bit faster, but if we're talking long distances, high speeds, lowest effort, Ellio is definitely one of the winners of that competition. One more thing I almost forgot is you can also brake on the engine, so it's quite special, but if you start turning the pedals backwards, the engine actually slows down just like a car would when you're in higher gear. And that's really great, to be honest. It's an additional feature you wouldn't expect on a bike. We know it from back in the day where you pedal backwards and you brake. That's not the same. It slows down and it regenerates the battery even. But it does change the way that you ride this bike. It takes some getting used to, but after a while I started braking on the engine much more often than with the brakes on the steering wheel. If I was approaching a roundabout, if I was approaching a red light, you take a more passive way of driving and you start braking beforehand, never needing the actual brakes on the bike. Also in maintenance or in replacement pieces, that kind of does make a difference over time. Covering the Ellio cockpit or steering wheel, it's probably the least aesthetic looking feature of the bike. On the left we find some easy to reach buttons. Here on the back we have the high beam, low beam change. We have the shift in RPM or cadence, which are done with these. Now, I won't press this button because in the park stand, if you press this, we have the walk assist. But so with these buttons, you can change the RPM or the cadence to match your preferences. This button is used for the cruise control. Pushing it to the right, we set it, and pushing it to the left, we reset it. If we push this button, we go from park to drive. Underneath we have a horn for when you're in between the cars, quite loud. To not scare the people on the roads, the pedestrians, they also mounted a bell. On the right here we have the differences in modes, going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and then to the catch me if you can mode. Also quite important for longer distances, we have these ergonomic grips. The brakes are very easy to manipulate. With 1 or 2 fingers you can come to a full stop. This battery holds a charge of 1150 kilowatt hours. Let's use the fourth mode as the highest mode, because the catch me if you can mode is really meant to draw all the power and have zero regard for battery efficiency. So in this fourth and highest stand, we can aim for 60 kilometers autonomy. If we lower the stand and you go into second or third mode, you'll have more kilometers or more miles that you can do. 60 kilometers, about 40 miles. Obviously, if you go at max speed at all times, it could be a bit lower. It also depends on your route, if you have hills or no hills, your weight, as well as the weather conditions. This bike can carry a weight up to 160 kilos. Including the driver, and weighs around 38 to 40 kilos itself. One more important point, depending on where you live and the infrastructure that you have, is the comfort and the suspension. The Ellio frames are made from aluminum, and although it's not steel, you do feel the shocks quite a bit. Ellio covers this by putting a steering wheel suspension as well as a seat suspension, which for me is a basic minimum. My conclusion on this speed Pedelec is I really love it, and I wasn't expecting that necessarily when I saw it for the first time. It doesn't look as sexy or as sportive as the others, but once you drive it you really notice that it's been built this way on purpose and it's meant to be driven and driven well. The heavier weight and the double engines, they offer that control, the extra grip and the comfort whilst riding. And the smaller wheels really do give that low center of gravity, which makes it feel like more like a motorcycle than anything else. If you can't find what you're looking for in the other more typical sportive fast speed pedelecs, check this one out and try testing it if you have the possibility. The comfort level could be a bit better, so I definitely advise getting these two to make sure you have that base level of comfort. But the riding style is really what I enjoyed the most. The speed is there, but also the fun whilst riding. The different option in the software, in the technology, really give you that possibility to get more joy out of riding this bike on long and boring roads. And that's basically it, my review of the Ellio Original. If you have any questions, I'm sure I forgot something or I made you curious, please put them in the comments down below and I'll answer as fast as I can. If you like this type of video or my other videos, do like and subscribe so that you can stay up to date. Thank you for watching, and you will see me in my next video. Bye.